Hello, 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 and welcome to part 3 of the Starting Steps for Congo, where we work towards getting Congo's economy off the ground with a sustainable 50 construction points and getting them off of traditionalism, isolationism, serfdom, and closed borders. Apologies for the delay in the release of this episode. Last week I was on vacation and tried my hardest to get this video ready for release before I left. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be.
I don't care about your excuses.
In the last episode, we set up our infrastructure to support the expansion of our construction sectors. Now, in this episode, we look to open up our country. That means with both markets and people. We will look to get a colonization law so that we can expand our borders and get off of closed borders so that we can start to get some level of migration. But this also means getting off of isolationism so that we can start building trade centers. Trade centers are vital when it comes to expanding your construction sectors when you are a small nation. We will eventually run out of peasants, so there are only so many buildings we can employ. Having trade centers will help us get additional goods for those construction sectors. This is also why the colonization and open borders laws are important, so that we can also employ more buildings to build more input goods for the construction sectors. Let's dive in. The news that the government intends to pass the colonial exploitation law has created great enthusiasm among those that are eager to exploit new and distant lands. So we can get a plus 20% success chance. We can get plus 10% prestige, though we don't really care about that too much right now. Now, getting the plus 50% colony growth speed would be nice, but we need to get this law passed as quickly as we can, so we're going to take the 20% success chance. Now, it is costing us a lot of money to subsidize these ports, which is why getting the rural folk back into the government and getting railways as quickly as we can is very important. A series of perceived poor decisions by the absolutist movement has led to a notable decrease in its ability to raise money. Numerous wealthy sympathizers have quietly halted their support for the movement in its current form. So we don't really care for the absolutist movement, but we could use additional pops. So we will take, or additional loyalists. So we will take this. All right. Colonial exploitation has advanced to consideration. And we got an agitator, a petite bourgeoisie traditionalist. We could do a selling another building. We'll sell the shipyards. So it looks like our reserves can hold a lot more now, so we'll actually sell more than just that. There we go. And now we got quite a bit stored up in the reserves. All right, laws progress to adoption. So the leader of our landowners has resigned. So let's see who our new person is. Prat Nobrega. And so this person is giving them -2 interest-group political strength. We see now our rural folk are no longer powerful. They're at 17% political power, which means if we do get farmers markets, we only get a plus 10% to infrastructure. Increased sightings of anti-Portuguese League members socializing with lawmakers at restaurants and entertainment establishments are raising concerns about lobbyist conduct. We could lose political strength from their armed forces, or we could appease the anti-Portuguese League. Now, we could gain 5 in legitimacy, so we will take that since our legitimacy is so low. And we have the atmospheric engine pump. Now, we don't have access to coal, but it does get us one step closer to getting railways here. So now our standard of living is up to 12.3. Use more textile mills. We should keep an eye on our population. We see we are now out of peasants. So after we are done with colonial exploitation, we will try to tackle our migration laws. Since the private queue is not building, we will also continue to not build. It will give a hit to the construction industries, but we'll wait till colonial exploitation passes here. A quick note from future ham cuts, fam cuts, if you will. In this moment, I decided not to build anything because of two reasons. One is that the private queue had to stop building since we're at our infrastructure cap. Therefore, the full cost of construction would have fallen on the government. And two, because we are at our infrastructure cap. However, this second reason doesn't matter as much because we are a single state. When you are over your infrastructure, it reduces the access that state has to its market, which makes everything not produced in the state more expensive, which means the buildings in that state will be less profitable since their input goods will cost considerably more. Since we're a single state, everything is a local good, so being over your infrastructure doesn't matter. However, it was still a good decision not to continue building because we don't have any more available workers in this moment. If we had workers available, then I should continue building since the investment pool has $5 million and can't fund any construction. Anything I build that I put up for sale will immediately sell. So it was still the right choice here to stop building, but for a different reason than I had at the time. Through the widespread introduction of the atmospheric engine in the mining industry, productivity is at an all-time high. So we can get throughput in all of these buildings, or we could get progress on tech for water to boiler. Generally, you always want to take this progress on tech. This afternoon, Muvembe Ngombe, leader of the industrialists, delivered a fiery speech advocating for the enactment of colonial exploitation. We will take the plus 15% enactment chance, and our next checkpoint is April 3rd. While we have the surplus budget, we also give people lowered taxes to help raise the standard of living a little bit. The government's attempts to pass the colonial exploitation laws brought the ethics of colonialism to the forefront of public debate. So we could get 40%, 20% chance, 40%, negative 10% chance, or we could do this one, which gives us a 50% chance of plus 10. So we will go with our chances on this, and we got a plus 10% chance. So our next checkpoint is May 12th, and we have colonial exploitation. So we'll start here. We won't start adding colonies up here yet. The more you add, the slower they all go. So we will take the two places that are connected to us because we need that to spread as quickly as it can. We also can add an additional interest now. So we will add an interest in France. We'll begin improving relations there, and we might as well improve relations with Great Britain. So now let's take a look at the rural folk. What laws would they like that will make them happy? Oh, yes, and we had proportional taxation before. So we will reform the government. We will add the rural folk back in. We will change our taxation laws to proportional taxation. And so you can see now we've gotten farmers markets activated again. And so now our infrastructure, we have a little bit more infrastructure, not enough to build, or at least not enough for the private sector to add anything in, but we will add in an additional textile mill and a millet farm. And we will bring taxes back to medium here. We'll build this for as long as we can. All right, we have mechanical tools. So you see we can actually, now we can do a steel mill and get more tools there. We could use more iron. If we added the atmospheric engine pump, it would give us a lot more iron. But we would need about 46 coal. So we're actually going to cancel this, and we're going to build a steel mill. We'll see if we can get, we are still on isolationism. After per capita taxation, we'll tackle that. We'll see if we can get coal. So you can see we have this agreement we could make with Portugal, where we would buy 41 coal from them. We would give them 12 small arms a week and 12 glass per week. We have an 87% chance of getting this without having to throw in an obligation. And we got it. So we now have plus 23 coal, some of it going to pop needs. Take a look at our iron mines. So we'll need a little bit more. Now we do see here, we actually can build a coal mine here in Congolese Congo. What's interesting about the colony here is that, remember, our state is a split state there. This isn't going to create a second state. They're just going to go into our state of Congo. And this one will be our second state. So we'll build this coal mine first. We'll add a decree of road maintenance. Just for extra throughput, we'll encourage the resource industry and promote social mobility there. All right, and we have banking, which gives us plus 10% to minting. Viewing Portuguese ownership of North Angola as a crime against the Congolese nation, the landowners have put their weight behind the anti-Portuguese League. So we have been leaning into the Portuguese here, since they are directly to our south. Now that we are not on peasant levies anymore, we can start thinking about maybe expanding into the land to our south here, because it would be very beneficial to us to get this piece of land. If we look at Portugal, we can see their military isn't that strong. 12 standing army battalions and 9 conscripts. Now that we have line infantry, we are probably at equal strength. We can take a look at what one of their armies might look like. So they have infantry and mobile artillery, which we have as well. Well, we have line infantry. So one thing we will do right after we're done with the railways is start looking at artillery so that we can start building that up and increasing some of this military tech here. So get Napoleonic warfare, army reserves. By that point, paddle steamer should be done. We can get general staff and field works. Generally, you don't want to do any type of military work until you get at least general staff and field works, though obviously more is best. So in answer to this event, we will allow the landowners to join the Anti-Portuguese League, and we'll see who's in that again. Yeah, so taking a negative stance towards the Portuguese will improve our relations with the armed forces, industrialists, and now the landowners as well. Ambitious middle strata citizens are opposing per capita taxation on the grounds that when they inevitably become wealthy capitalists, they will be excessively taxed. A line as old as time, apparently. So we'll lose 4% tax rate for 2 years, but we will get 10% enactment chance. Though looking at our budget, just not quite sure that is something we necessarily want to embrace. So we'll take the lesser here, the 5% enactment chance. All right, so law progressive consideration on per capita taxation. We also now have a coal mine. So we can increase the demand for coal by going to the atmospheric engine pump in the iron mines. It now has considerably lowered the price of iron, which you can see has helped our budget quite a bit. And now we will wait for this iron mine to higher up. On top of that, it is time to look at selling a building. So we can look at the arms industries. Let's see if that sells. And it did. You can see our reserves now hold, oh, that's right, our reserves hold a little bit more because of tech that we got. So we might as well see if this will sell as well. And it did. So now our reserves are fairly full, and it gives us a little bit more time. So in order to get our private sector to begin building again, we need more infrastructure, and it's going to be about 31 months till we get railways. We can build more ports, but we are paying a little bit of money for subsidies for them now. So something we can do is to try to make them profitable. Their export good, or the product that they make are merchant marines. If we look at our market, we have an excess of 30. A single port will make 10 merchant marines and add 3 infrastructure. So if we can build 2 more ports, that will give us 6 more infrastructure. That will get the private queue building again. And we will have an excess of 50 merchant marines. Now, we are still on isolationism, but we can do goods transfers. And we've just finished increasing our relations with the French. So let's take a look at the French market. And we see they have a deficit of merchant marines. So we'll try to make a treaty with them. So we can sell them 50. We can see we're getting -5 diplomatic stance because of the difference of our ranks. But we can throw in a power block embassy. They are looking to buy dyes. And I believe our dye plantations are not fully hired, so we can make more. Yes. So we can afford to make more dyes. A single dye plantation will make a total of 25 in our market right now. We are using 5 of them. So essentially, we could get to a surplus of 20 if fully hired. Going back to the French, if we sell them dyes, so we can do up to 17. We could also owe them an obligation, but we still will keep the dyes up there because that will be a good sale for us. And then you can see we're going to sell a bunch of these merchant marines, which is the main goal of this treaty, so that we can afford to build 2 more ports and get more infrastructure. So we will do this for 10 years because by that time we will have railways, and this won't be as much of an issue for us. We'll have railways well before 10 years is up, but this will at least keep the ports profitable, and so they will accept this. So now we can see we have a little bit of a deficit in ports, which is good. So we want to build 2 more. And we will do that before the steel mills. We will build that. We can see now it's profitable. We don't need to subsidize it. And you can see we're actually making a profit off of that treaty. So the merchant marines are a little expensive for us right now until we build up those 2 ports. But you can see from we are making a profit, a net profit off of the treaty. You see how much you're earning from selling the goods, how much it's costing you to buy the goods in your market. The upper strata have decided to donate generously to the poor. Many among them even advocate for the per capita taxation law, agreeing that it would be a fair means of redistributing wealth. So we could get a 20% enactment success chance, or we could raise the standard of living for the lower strata by 1, which is actually an excellent thing to take. We will take that. And so because of that profit we're making from the treaty, we now have a bit of a budget surplus. So what we're going to do is, first, we'll lower taxes and raise wages a little bit, but we can also now try to add another construction sector. And we will build that before the ports because that will help us build the ports faster. A low-born man has risen as the popular leader of the intelligentsia, with some not so pleased by such social mobility. So let's take a look at who our current head is. A Democrat. It's giving plus 5% political strength, but not much on the other thing. Plus 5% political strength is not a great thing. It could be more. So we'll take a new character. So our new person is also a Democrat, plus 5% political strength, and pretty much the same thing. So not much change there. As news escapes Lisbon of yet another violent crackdown on the Portuguese labor movement, outraged members of the trade unions have taken to the streets of Kinshasa, marching under the banner of the Anti-Portuguese League. All right, so another person joins the league. All right, so you can see we now have 3 fully staffed construction sectors, and our budget is not too bad. So now we're up to 25 construction points. Law progressed to adoption. Now that we added a construction sector, the price of the goods. So we still have enough iron. We have enough logging. Fabric is a little pricey, so we might need to build another cotton plantation. And tools. Now tools, we're going to get more once that steel mill finishes. If we take a look at fabric in our market, we have a little bit of a deficit there. So we'll add another cotton plantation. We got law advancement to adoption. So we got paddle steamer when we finally get a navy. And now our ports have fully built. We have a little bit more infrastructure. So it looks like our private construction still isn't building because it doesn't find anything it can really build. But we can still build things and sell to them. Miteve Matu, leader of the Petite Bourgeoisie, has made a remarkable play for power in the capital in order to secure a spot for Petite Bourgeoisie within the government. However, it's not entirely clear if they should be rewarded for this, for their novel tactics. Well, it looks like now the Petite Bourgeoisie are our leading interest group, and we'll give them a little bit more political strength. Enthralled by the beautiful romanticist artwork produced by Portuguese artists, the intelligentsia have begun lobbying in favor of closer ties with Portugal. So this will be an interesting dynamic in that we'll have a pro and anti-Portuguese lobby in the country. We don't want to make the intelligentsia lose political strength since they are the lowest rung of interest groups right now, so we'll let them make this. So now we can see we are exactly level with our merchant marines. Now, it is time to sell a building. However, we don't have any more urban buildings, but we are about to finish the steel mills. So we'll wait the 4 weeks and try to sell it once it completes. So the steel mill has now finished. We will go to the tooling workshop and have it start using this. And then we'll go to the steel mill and put it up for sale. And so this will start hiring fairly soon. And we can see the steel mills have sold. So let's go back over to them and make sure we take off the sell. All right, and we have per capita taxation. Now our budget is looking good right now because we're not building. It's not a dire situation because the private sector isn't building either, so we're not putting the construction burden on them, but it generally isn't a good idea because it means our GDP is no longer growing. Now we've got a big surplus of iron, a surplus of wood, and now a surplus of fabric, as well as a surplus of tools. We can afford another construction sector. Now you can see we are getting tech spread on the water tube boiler, which is at 87%. With the water tube boiler, we'll get access to labor-saving PMs here. So we essentially want to make sure we have enough tools and coal in the market to start utilizing it. We now have some excess tools. Coal, on the other hand, we could use some more. We now have more peasants here, so we can look to max out this and utilize the atmospheric engine pump in preparation for the water tube boiler. So now we want to look at getting off of isolationism. We can't go after protectionism because we don't have stock exchange. We could go after mercantilism, although mercantilism will give us a penalty trade advantage for imports, and we will need to be importing things. The other thing is, if we go for free trade, we can get rid of the corn laws. And this will give us a plus 25% trade advantage in both directions for imports and exports. We just won't be able to tariff anything, which isn't so bad at the moment. Problem is, it looks like nobody really supports that. Unfortunately, we don't have our petite bourgeoisie market liberal anymore. Normally, the industrialists will help you get free trade. Unfortunately, their leader is a protectionist. This person supports protectionism and mercantilism and opposes free trade. So at the moment, our industrialists do not support it. Now we could try to exile this person and get a different leader. And then throw the industrialists in there. This is what we will try to do. Now this will lower the approval of the industrialists by 5, though they are happy right now at a plus 15, and when we start enacting free trade, it'll gain happiness for them as well. And we got another protectionist. So not so much luck there. So normally that is an option. Unfortunately, it just wasn't an option that worked well for us now. Let's take a look at our new leader and see what we're getting with them. So plus 1 interest group approval and plus 2% interest group pop attraction. So at the moment, we'll have to go for mercantilism, though it's not what we prefer. It's better than being on isolationism. We do need to start trading. And so we can see the industrialists support it. And so we will rearrange our government now to throw the industrialists in there and go for mercantilism. All right, we got an advancement to consideration. Congolese industrialists are interested in making investments in neighboring Portuguese industries. So luckily, we can afford to lose 3 interest group approval from them, and this will raise the manufacturing tax income for 5 years instead of it helping out Portugal. A visiting dignitary from the French Empire has been murdered in a Kinshasa restaurant. It is suspected that this was an attempt to sabotage a trade agreement that would bring Congo out of its isolated state. So we'll lose relations with France, though we have plenty of influence to try to repair them again, but we'll gain plus 10%, or we'll lose 20% enactment time and lose some pop attraction to the modernization movement. So we will take this. We'll now, and then we'll look at our relations here and begin improving them once more. All right, and we have the water tube boiler. So we are going to utilize this PM in everything we can in order to save on employment. We also have the option of doing the condensing engine pump for these industries, which we will do as we need them. So we'll need to be increasing our tools and coal output, but we'll go to our buildings. We'll go down the list. Water tube boiler. Now, I'm going to take a look. So we have more people to employ. Excellent. And we now have railways. Excellent, excellent. So after these coal mines, we already have a steel mill. And we have Bessemer process, which will help us get more steel out of our steel mill. We'll see here, our steel mill can produce more. So what we will do, we will produce a motor industry, and then we'll do 2 railways. This will give us a lot of infrastructure, but also it'll allow us to start using the labor-saving PMs in all the resource buildings. John Cockerell, a wealthy and powerful industrialist from Belgium, sees Congo as a lucrative and untapped market. In exchange for various political favors to be redeemed at an unspecified point in time, John Cockerell is willing to share with us the industrial technology of his homeland. So this is a wonderful event. We will get plus 100% tech spread on the production tech tree and gain 10% enactment chance on mercantilism. The other option, we just get the plus 10% and we lose relations with Belgium. So we will take this top one. And we can see our budget is looking a lot better because our private sector is building again, which means we can afford another construction sector. Let's take a look at the goods. So we probably need more iron, more wood, maybe more fabric, and more tools. Now, part of this might be that these buildings are not fully staffed. Yes, so our iron mines are not, because we are having employment problems. So what we will do is we'll keep this construction sector at the bottom of the list, because after we get those 2 railways, we will activate some of the labor-saving railway PMs in the resource industries, and that will free up some workers to work and fully staff out the buildings for the inputs for a construction sector. Law progress to adoption. Excellent. For the time being, we can raise wages and lower taxes. Might as well, if we're gaining budget. Taking interest in Congo's modernization efforts, Netherlands has offered us the service of General Andres Victor Michiels, apologies, as a military consultant. The terms of this agreement appear favorable, but we should be wary of indebting ourselves to foreign powers. So, once again, we'll get plus 100% tech spread on military and another 10% enactment success chance. So we will take this. You can see we can now afford to build more coal mines, considering how much coal we are going to need. We will just continue to build coal in this state. We can see we're getting a pretty good throughput bonus because we're encouraging the resource industry and we have colonial exploitation. In fact, we might even move here to the condensing engine pump. Also, on second thought, considering how many construction points we'll need for the motor industries, we will move this new construction sector to the top here to speed up construction. representing his constituents in the industrialists, Kivuzi Kimpanzu has issued a formal petition to the Congolese government to pass oligarchy. We currently have autocracy, so we don't mind so much to move to oligarchy from autocracy. Remember, we did want to go to religious schools to help get the Catholic Church back on the board, so we'd rather not do private schools. So in this instance, we can give a promise for oligarchy. All right, so we got law debate failed. All right, and so we now have 30 points of construction. Law debate success. All right, we got army reserves. So it increases our conscriptable battalions. And we got, well, now we have stock exchange. So we could go to protectionism if we wanted to, even though we are now at the adoption phase of mercantilism. So decision to make. We would rather be on protectionism. Do we want to let this finish out or end it and go for protectionism? Considering we have a 0% stall chance on it, we might as well, as odd as it sounds, cancel this out and go for protectionism. A factory in Congo has been rocked by a tremendous boiler explosion with dozens dead or injured. The story of this tragedy has quickly become a national event. So we would rather take radicals from the upper strata because that's less people, so we'll do that. Okay, a lot of it failed. Maybe we'll regret having stopped mercantilism. So we have artillery. Now we can actually have artillery in our military. We'll add the remaining conscripts in for that. The influx of Russian lobbying money into Congolese politics has raised domestic tensions significantly. Rumors and accusations of certain politicians being Russian agents have become commonplace. So when we take a look at our legitimacy, we don't want to lose 5 because we'll fall into an unacceptable government. Now, 5% of Congo pops becoming more radical isn't great. But we also will lose more radicals if we lose legitimacy. So we will take that. A lot of it failed. Okay, so we're going to start regretting our decision here. We will add, first we'll be told of our legislative failures. And now to the build queue, we can now do an artillery foundry. An influential faction within the armed forces has grown frustrated with their co-members' neutrality on the topic of protectionism. Themselves in favor of the law, they have now resolved to form a separate political faction intent on passing it. So we will take the plus 15% enactment success chance. We now have motor industry. We also have the Bessemer process. So we can take a look at our steel mill, or just steel in general. So we have a little bit of a deficit. And we'll see okay, so we can hire more. So we don't need to add the Bessemer process yet, but it is something we have now for when this building fully hires. Now that we have motor industries, we can add public trams, and we have a decent amount of coal, so we can add gas streetlights. And our financial districts are expanding the iron mines, which is nice. All right, so we lost 10% enactment chance on protectionism. Now, our budget is in the green, which means we can afford another construction sector. We'll let the reserves fill up a little bit, and then we'll add it in. We got a law advancement, so we gain 15% success chance on protectionism. Napoleonic warfare. So we'll unassign these conscripts and now put them to mobile, since for the moment, when you hit upgrade, it doesn't upgrade conscripts selected. This afternoon, Prat Nabrega, leader of the rural folk, delivered a fiery speech advocating for the enactment of protectionism. So we'll take the plus 15%. Now, the other thing we want to start thinking about is building a navy. And the first thing we will need is a military shipyards. And so we will add that after the artillery foundry. We are going to need more workers. So once we finish with protectionism, we will look to get off of closed borders. So we have our first railway. We're going to subsidize it so that it builds up. We got an advancement to consideration. We have plenty of wood, so we will add this. And now we will add another construction sector. Since it's going to take that many weeks for this railway. We'll put that next. Law progressed to adoption. All right, so Andre Kinlaza has died, and we now have a new Menakongo. Let's take a look at our new leader. Ngangu Kinlanza, Ngangu Kinlaza. So we get plus 5% prestige, plus 10% influence. Ooh, and this person is bigoted, unfortunately. So we lose. We get plus 100 authority, but we lose 100 influence, and then we get more radicalism from those 3 acceptance statuses. So it's not a great ruler to have. All right, so now we are at 35 construction points. And we have protectionism. We now have access to a market. Very first thing we need now is our very first ever trade center. And in fact, we are going to do that sooner rather than later since it builds so quickly. And we will now try to open our borders. Now, the question to choose with this is if you choose migration controls, anybody under 60 acceptance doesn't get to migrate in or out. If you do no migration controls, you lose a little bit of leverage resistance, but acceptance status doesn't matter. Now, if we look at our society, so the Bakongo are always accepted, and the other 2 statuses are at plus 70. So if we did migration controls, it wouldn't stop any of our pops from leaving. The reasons why they would is if we had a low standard of living and they would migrate to a place that has a higher standard of living. We actually have a pretty good standard of living right now, and migration controls wouldn't really apply to them, but it would prevent others from coming into our country. We get less of a stall chance on migration controls, but it might be worth going for no migration controls at the moment. So we're going to go for this and see what happens. Now, before our trade center finishes, we're going to look at our tariffs and subventions. And we want to make sure nobody's taking our construction goods. And we're not going to tariff imports on any of those things. We would also like to import some grain. In fact, most of our staple goods we could use a little bit more on. And we have a lot of hardwood. So we'll put a high tariff on the import, and we will not tariff any exports. Coal, though, we will tariff any exports. We want to keep that. And other than that, everything can stay where it is. And now we have our very first trade center. So let's see if it'll hire. Yes, it will. And so we're already importing sugar. And so we have it on the outlier. And so now we will keep an eye on it here. Law of progressive consideration on no migration controls. Hopefully this goes quickly because we forgot about our promise to the industrialists with oligarchy. So we will go for that next. We are now set to complete our goal of getting 50 construction points. We've opened up our market, which is a big step. We've gotten colonial exploitation, which is expanding our borders and has given us access to coal. The last law we need to pass is no migration controls so that we can get off of closed borders. Next week's episode 4 will be the final one in this series as we will complete these 2 final goals of the Starting Steps run. If you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like and the channel a subscribe. Every time you do, another interest group joins the Anti-Portuguese League for some reason. That's it for now. As always, be awesome.